Okay, welcome to Fresh Set of Downs. My name is Bruce Badgley, and we've got a very special guest with us tonight, and also a special guest host. A lot of guests here this evening. Joe Mays from the Bulldog Hour. Josh, one of the best team podcasts that you're going to find in the state of Pennsylvania. And, man that I respect in the coaching field. I've known him for quite a few years here. Rick Prete from Roman Catholic High School. Rick, welcome. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Bruce. Bruce and Joe, thanks for having me.
Well, I'll tell you what, Rick. Obviously, we've known each other for a few years, going back quite a ways here. But yeah, focusing on Roman Catholic High School. Talk a little bit about the journey from when you started until now, and maybe some of the changes that you've had to do personally and in your coaching style as you've got to this point.
Sure. So we got here 5 years ago, and I think we were very fortunate because we inherited a team that was senior heavy and had
maybe
really good leadership. And then the next year COVID hit, right? So the first year we were able to do some good things. I think we beat Archbishop Wood for the first time in school history. That was huge for us. And then me being inexperienced as a head coach, I thought we were off and running, right? So then COVID came in and kind of threw, the whole nation and the whole world actually, for a loop. But that kind of set us back big time because we ended up playing games that year where we weren't allowed to practice because we were inside the city limits, but we were allowed to play games. And
wow.
we felt like it was, best for our seniors to get filmed no matter what the circumstances were. But I think looking back at that, it definitely set us back a year in our process. And then, the next year we put together a pretty good schedule and we came out of the gate 0-3. And that was like, that was a trying time. But at the time, I recall those games were all one-score games that we lost, to some really good programs. Newman, Goretti, we played them at Rutgers, and they got us, in the last minute or so. Bonner got us. I felt like that Bonner team that year was a state title contender. They got us, in the last minute. And then we lost to Episcopal Academy by a score. So everything kind of looked like it was going downhill, and trying to get people to just keep believing. And then we were able to put together a couple of wins, and one of them being over LaSalle for the first time.
I remember that.
In many, many years. And that kind of gave all those guys a glimpse at what we can do, if we continue to trust the process. And then I think last year it kind of got rolling for us, and then this year, we're still building upon that. So it's just kind of been the work of the kids and the coaches, and understanding what our logistics are of a school, like how our field is, about 2 miles away, and the kids are going to walk there, and how the what your practice schedule needs to be. And I think getting into the comfort zone of that has kind of helped us.
Joe, question?
Yeah, Coach. I was just, I've got to see you now 2 years in a row. First at Wilson last year, this year got to come down to you. And last year, you're just impressed by the student athletes you were throwing out there. Incredible caliber players, and it's tough to keep up. And you had a fantastic year last year. So, a year later, here we are, and we came down to you thinking, okay, maybe we can get the best of them this year. It didn't work in our favor, but I actually came away even more impressed of your team culture this past, like just a few months ago. I think it caught a few of us off guard that I felt the team was even more cohesive, and you were performing at a higher level this year. Even if some of the bigger names had moved on, you just seem to have reloaded and had built a really great foundation. Is that something that you and the coaching staff have the same opinion of your squad this year as well, that you feel maybe a little bit more complete because that's just the way it came off that first game of this year. It was really impressive to see the full team. I couldn't find a weakness. You guys were fantastic. And I just was wondering if that's something that you've been talking about building and the culture and trusting the process. Do you see this 2023 team being a step above where you were even last year?
Well, first of all respect to Wilson and the program there. I know a couple of those guys, one being Jeremy Palm, he was my former quarterback in college. Yeah, I mean, I think this team we are self-aware this year. We know where our deficiencies are, and we know what we're capable of at the same time, right? So like we lose a big time player at a certain position, and then we know that we have other guys ready to go and step up and make their name. And maybe they're not, the same height, weight, maybe they're not the same, whatever, but if it's a kid, what we believe in is we have like little phrases, and one of the phrases in our program is like run full speed. And it doesn't necessarily mean run full speed, but it just means everything you do, you give 100%, effort. And I think that our kids are starting to see that we're process driven. And I think them following the process has lent itself to produce some results. So compared to last year's team, I think last year's team, as far as quote unquote star power, there was more of that there. But I also feel like this team has guys who are making their name. And I think last year's team was very cohesive as well. And because that's one of the things that we work on big in our program is just spending time with the kids outside of football and doing non-football related activities with them, and trying to show them that we care about them on a higher level. But I think there's a bunch of similarities to your point, but yes, I also see the difference in this team is very much like, okay, you think we're not going to be as good as last year's team, let's prove it otherwise, and to be completely blunt, it was a surprise to us as well, as coaches, to see them respond. You open up with Wilson West Lawn is a tremendous program. And, I had some of the same questions going into that week 0 game. And I think our kids stepped up big and answered. And I think what's really cool about this team is the seniors are stepping up. But when you really look at our roster, Joe, I mean, everybody's back next year.
Yes, I was looking into that. After the game in week 1, I was like, this is not a top heavy roster. This is still a young and developing team, which is scary for opponents in 2024. I don't want to jump past 2023 because you guys still have a lot of meaningful games here coming up, but certainly have an incredible foundation coming back next season as well. So kudos to what you and your coaching staff have cultivated down there, because it's truly been impressive to watch the last 2 years.
Thanks, Joe. And on top of that, what's it mean from year to year? I don't know. It's Pennsylvania. It's great football. Like there's so many really, really good programs. So we're just trying to stay process oriented.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's a little bit different down in the Catholic League in Philadelphia, insofar as you guys are the head coaches are very much kind of CEOs, because it's not only the situation of X and O's on the field, but it's the planning, just what Joe talked about, making sure that that pipeline is taken care of, because you don't have a beeline of guys in there. So you have a lot of items to look after, not just the X and O's, but a program manager too, right, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built in a program like ours, and that I'm finding out as I go along. So it hasn't been, it's not perfect, but it's continually growing. Like we have academic advisors, right? Since we're not in the building and not teaching at the school, we have a strength coach that is full time with most of the programs at Roman Catholic. We just have different we just have kind of different deals that we have to work through, every day, because it's not your normal school with your elementary school, your middle school feeder, and then you're, these guys are coming to you, right? And like people think that we have that we in the Catholic League or in District 12, but really the Catholic League have some sort of advantage, when I would tell you that I would do anything to just have our kids be able to, that the kids that we knew were coming to us, right? Like I think that's a huge advantage to be able to work with those guys. I mean, I don't know how we've done it in the past at Catholic schools, but there is no elementary feeder, there is no middle school feeder. So our thing is to market our school. I think the football team, and at Roman, also obviously the basketball program, have to be at the front porch of your school. It doesn't mean that you're so athletic oriented that that's how you get your student athletes to come in, but there's just so many different factors in how you have to go about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got plenty of business to take care of this week. I mean, going up against St. Joe Prep. Talk a little bit about that, playing a team like that, but just talk a little bit about what it's like to have those guys on your schedule every year.
I think it presents itself an amazing opportunity. I think it's a blessing to look on our schedule every year and see that caliber of a program, because it means that you are competing against the best in the country, and you have the opportunity to do something great. Obviously, I think they are at a standard that we should all aspire to be to, especially us in the Catholic League. But I think it's just a great opportunity. They have great players, they have great coaches, and then just program wise and institutionally, I think they do a really, really good job. So the opportunity to play them every year and see where we are, see how we stack up, know where our flaws are and where we need to get better, and one day, beat those guys. That means a lot to us to be able to look on the schedule and see them.
Joe, question?
Coach, do you like having the St. Joseph Prep game as the last game of the regular season? Do you wish it was earlier in the year, or do you like that as kind of one last measuring stick before you move on to the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. The way it shook out the last couple of years, I mean, with us having an opportunity to play for the PCL championship, I think it being the last game, it's kind of like poetic, right? So, and I also think that, I mean, going into a situation where no matter the outcome of this game, you have a game, you have a date the following week with Archbishop Wood, and then we have to handle our business there. And if we do handle our business, I think that the St. Joe's game is just a great measuring stick, and no matter what, when you play, I was telling a story earlier in the year about when we went down to play DeMatha, and it was like I really felt like we got better, right? And we lost the game, obviously it went to 5 overtimes, and it was a tough loss. It was heartbreaking because I felt like we were better, honestly. But we got better from that game. So obviously you play St. Joe's, then, you're going to get better going into the next week,
Yeah, and the level of competition there is just pretty incredible down there in District 12. Do you ever wish, and I talk about this all the time, do you ever wish that we had some some wild card teams that got into the PIAA tournament, that instead of bye weeks, we have all these bye weeks that are throughout, speckled throughout the tournament there, maybe having a team or two from some of the District 12 or District 1, get in, because you guys seem to just be beating up on each other every single year.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I think it's unfortunate the way it's laid out. I mean, when you look at our situation last year, like, you have to beat a great MOTEP program, right? No problem, I understand. But I just wonder if there's some teams in between us and MOTEP that, we should probably, take a shot at the other side of the bracket, maybe, or something. But I also know that this is a lot by design. A good deal of this is by design. And that's a whole nother topic, right, where you're talking about boundary and non-boundary, but a lot of this is for the MOTEPs and the Roman Catholics of the world to knock each other out, to give others an opportunity. And that's my belief. That's just my belief,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe?
Well, Coach, I'm glad you brought up the DeMatha, because that was something, I asked you about St. Joe's Prep here at your last regular season game. It is de facto league championship, which is fantastic. But I wanted to ask you about, how do you go about scheduling your non-league games? The first 5 weeks or so, you're looking for non-league competitors. I know your schedule is a little different than it was last year, and year to year you're grabbing a couple teams here and there, and DeMatha popped up. How did that come about? Like, what was did you open up communication with them? Did they reach out? Was there a third party hooking you up? Because I mean, that's a marquee matchup. That's a huge two teams that are best in the part of the best in the nation, hooking up, 5 overtime thriller. How did that even come onto the schedule?
We were scheduled to play them, I think, 2 years ago, and the game kind of fell through for various reasons. And Coach McGregor and I always spoke about revisiting that game, because they're in a similar situation as us as far as scheduling, where they have to find 4 or 5 non-league games, which is just, to be honest with you, just brutal. It's hard to do, because when we got here again 5 years ago, Roman was playing whatever teams they were playing, and now we circle back and try to play those teams, and they won't play us now, right? And it's harder to get those games scheduled now. It's fine, I understand, but the point remains that we have to find 4 to 5 non-league games. So what you wind up seeing is that I think you always want to schedule non-league games that test you and push you to the limit, right? And in the Philadelphia area, I think you want to be mindful of, you want to have some geographical games, some games that means certain things for kids from certain neighborhoods, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But I think that was like this year with Cheltenham for us we have kids from the Cheltenham area, and that was a game that was like, that they wanted to play, and the feeling was mutual. I think we scheduled Lincoln this year because I really, really respect what they're doing over there, and I feel like that they are going to be the next public league, team that kind of steps up as a really, really good I think they're doing a great job. So that's kind of how our non-league came together. We always want to try to get an Interact school in there,
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
if we can go Interact, and then a North Jersey or a DMV, and then you pick up just a traditional powerhouse like Wilson, I just think it's good high school football. I always look for diversity in our schedulings. I don't know necessarily where we're at from year to year. Like, I don't know if we're the kind of program that can, schedule the IMGs of the world, and turn around and schedule, also schedule DeMatha, and then schedule a Bosco or a Bergen, and then turn around in our own league and then play prep, right? Like, I don't know from a year to year if we can do that, because there's 4 or 5 games you have to pick every year, so it makes it tough. And that's why like the Wilson game was good because it was a 2-year deal, and it just kind of like alleviated what are we doing for the first game of the year. So
yeah, that kind of schedule too wears on you too. I mean, physically that's got to be tough when you're going up against that high quality opponent, week in, week out, and then preparing for, a postseason too, right?
yeah, I mean, that's where I would love to be there, and I think we're climbing to get to that point. But I just, like I said, I want to be self-aware and understand that like Wilson West Lawn could have beat us this year. Lincoln could have beat us this year. Like I really felt like Episcopal Academy, based off of the way that game shook out 2 years ago, I thought it would be a little bit closer. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. Those games wear on you. We want to get to that point, but we have to get the numbers right. We have to get our numbers where they need to be. And then like, I'm sure, Bruce, and I'm sure Joe knows, like, there's a lot of budgetary constraints.
Yeah, exactly.
That like we might want to get on a flight and go play in Georgia somewhere, and it's just not there for us, So that's kind of how scheduling shakes out too.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, you have a final question here for Coach Prete?
Yeah, I do actually, and apologies for not knowing this off the top of my head here. Coach, when did you and your staff take over? What was your first season?
2019 was the
2019.
season of 2019 was our first year.
All right, that's okay. Because I was looking back on your past results here for the program, and looks like you took over a team that was 1-10 in 2018, and you and your staff have, I mean, what a complete 180 in just a few years time. It's very impressive. I just was looking back over, talking about what teams have you been playing since you've been there, looking at some of your past schedules. And I went back a year too far to 2018. And I noticed that I didn't realize that you guys had been down that far before you and your crew got there. That's really impressive. So, I mean, it kind of speaks to what you and the staff, your mantra is working. So kudos to you. It's not really a question, just kind of notice that, and just kind of incredible to see where you guys are at right now with the situation you came into. Not the team hadn't been winning a lot of games, at least the year before. I can't go back super far, but 2018, the only win was the Thanksgiving Day game. And for you guys to be where you're at now, it's quite an accomplishment.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I would just say that I know the Roman Catholic, the alumni, and all the people in the building, the administration, like they've always been hungry to win. And I think the process, right, the everyday process, and just working and just grinding and having their support has helped tremendously. And I definitely appreciate that compliment. And just we're just going to keep working the process and let the results fall where they may.
Well, I tell you what, Coach, thanks a lot for spending some time on obviously a very busy week here preparing for St. Joe Prep. Obviously a big week on the schedule, and obviously then this is the best time of year. Then it all becomes, win or go home, and that's, I think, the kind of football that everybody enjoys. Rick Prete, I tell you what, thank you very much for your time,
Bruce.
sir.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, man. Take care. We'll see you.
All right now.
Oh, that was fantastic. That was great to talk to him.
I've known Rick since he was the OC at Imhotep, and we got to know each other kind of intimately down there at where we always hang out there at the Philly Finest 7-on-7. That's where I really got to know Rick. And the best part about 7-on-7 is I think that the access that we have for the players and the coaches, we can sit around, we can talk, we can bounce ideas off of one another. Rick has always been very kind to me, and kind of brought me along and pointed me in the right direction when it comes to Philadelphia football in general. And obviously he's got his pulse on that. And it is kind of a completely different animal than the rest of the state of Pennsylvania, isn't it? Philadelphia.
Certainly I mean, he brought up the challenges. You hear a lot of talk about boundary versus non-boundary and the recruiting aspect and things like that, but a lot of people don't understand that there isn't that built-in base that the public schools have, like your traditional school system have. You're developing players and sending them up on their way. And he brings up a good point that in order for them to survive, they have to go about the ways doing what they do to have a JV team in place to get the varsity ready. And certainly his process is working. Like I mentioned, just going back and looking through this, he took over a program that was definitely down. And it took. The nice thing you can say about Roman Catholic as an entity is that they were patient with coach and his staff, because 19, 20, 21, more success, modest success, but then all of a sudden you have a coaching staff entering year 4 back in 2022 that has developed players. They've kind of had their group there. They had brought them all up throughout the system, and they exploded. Had a fantastic year last year, and like I said, and I wasn't lying, I think they're even better this year. Bruce, we'll talk about Jameel Lyons' current team at the end of the show, but he was one of the big names there last year, and I thought they were really good last year. So I was hopeful after guys like him and moved on that Wilson could go down there and hang with Catholic and look good. But honestly, I think Roman looked better this year. And again, you're now in year 5 with Coach Prete and his staff, and everything that they've done has paid dividends for them. And it'll be interesting to see what they can do with St. Joe's this week, and if they can make some noise and maybe take down Emotep this year in the District 5 play.
Yeah, that's gonna be quite the grudge match from those set up there. All right, well, listen, we're going to take a look at some of last week's results here, if I can get my screen share to work here. And here we go. You can probably see that now, can't you? Well, I guess not. Maybe not.
Nope, nothing here.
Not yet. Let me try this once again. We'll do our share. See if I can get my picture up there. Oh, that's not working too well. Oh, gosh. I don't know why that's not working. Interesting. Hang on. We're going to try this one more time. Share. And no, that's not it. All right.
Seeing YouTube.
Oh, well, let's talk about last week's results real quick here, Joe.
We're going to start with Roman.
Yeah, let's start with Roman and that 27-21 win then over LaSalle College, which is always a grudge match. They jumped out pretty quick, and they kind of had to hang on. LaSalle kind of an up and comer here this year, but they haven't been able to get over the top yet on some of these big teams.
Yeah. It's now 2 years in a row, at least, that Roman Catholic's got the best of LaSalle College. LaSalle College was kind of the first big, District 12 team down there. Once they were added to the PIAA, LaSalle College stepped up and was that team to beat. St. Joe's rose to the top. Roman's competitor this week, but LaSalle College has had an up and down over the last few years. Very impressive school. Actually, I have a former player of mine down there right now that I really wish he was still at Wilson. But 27-21 for Roman Catholic over LaSalle College High School. Another great victory for Roman Catholic, and had to do it on the road at Wissahickon, but it's one of those marquee PCL matchups, and for the second straight year, Catholic got the best of LaSalle, and
it's
just
tough.
a big time game. That's a marquee game. That's one of those games that if I wasn't so involved with Wilson and the family business, that's one of those I would love to go and watch myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one of those games that just traditional rivals, of school districts up in the old anthracite leagues. Schuylkill Haven having a great season, outlast Minersville 35-28.
Yeah, it was a close game. I was personally pulling for Minersville. I have nothing against Schuylkill Haven, but I know the coach up at Minersville, and obviously there's a history there with John Gursky, so I have a little bit of love for Minersville. Couldn't get it done at Schuylkill Haven, 35-28, but a great game that extends Schuylkill Haven's win streak to 8 now. They lost the opening game of the year to Marian Catholic, but they rattle off 8 wins in a row. And I guess that probably locks up the division championship for them. So congratulations to the Hurricanes on a 1 touchdown victory over Minersville.
Yeah, Mike Farr, head coach there at Schuylkill Haven, was the coach of the Big 33 team this year. So he's big in the Coaches Association. I know Mike well. I wish him all the luck in the world in the postseason. The game that I did for Penn Live was incredible. East Pennsboro outlasting Susquehanna Township 31-28. Keith Oates, the quarterback for East Pennsboro, got knocked out of the game and came back in the fourth quarter. They scored 2 touchdowns in the last 6 minutes to win this one. I mean, Susquehanna Township really looked good. They've got Lex Cyrus, who's just a really exciting player. But I tell you what, we couldn't believe what we just saw. My buddy PJ and I calling the game there. We just couldn't believe what we just saw. And just a great job by East Pennsboro. John Dunnison, these are his guys. He's been there now, 4 years. This entire group has worked under him. Same thing as Rick Prete there. He's got his guys and he's got his stamp on all these players, and they're playing for him. I guess the bad part is that they're in 4A in District 3.
Oh, yeah, that's a rough go of it. That's a tough one. They really rebounded this year, East Pennsboro.
Yeah, they have. It's been a gradual process. They did get to the postseason last year. They did win a playoff game, and
they beat Kenner Gale last year, but they ran into who you're probably alluding to, Bishop McDevitt, there in the quarterfinal last year, who they may end up seeing here in the next few weeks. But what a great season for East Pennsboro, and that's fantastic that you got to call that game at Susquehanna Township. The only blemish for East Pennsboro is a 1 touchdown setback at Northern York, a little bit uncharacteristic loss for them as the Polar Bears are down this year. So pulled off a little bit of an upset against East Pennsboro, but what a game for them against Susquehanna Township. And I'm as long as they don't falter against Waynesboro this week, who's struggling this year, I would assume the Colonial Division in the Mid-Penn is going to go to those East Pennsboro Panthers.
Yes, it would. And I think a game that really reverberated across the wire on Friday night was Conestoga Valley's victory over Exeter. What do you think there?
Yeah, that one, I don't want to say it surprised me because I waffled on my picks that I do on the Fearless Friday football forecast with Mike Drago. I went back and forth of who I was picking on that. I ended up going with the Berks team because I like to favor my Berks County players here, but that was a tough one because Conestoga Valley's having one heck of a year. And they're not a team historically that is, that we see win 7, 8, 9 games a year. But outside of a little bit of a beatdown they got from Manheim Central a couple weeks ago, their only other loss was to Garden Spot.
And look at the year they're at.
And they're having a fantastic year as well. Their only losses to Twin Valley by 1 point, who's also having a fabulous year, whose only losses to Effort. We could go on and on and on. But Conestoga Valley, pulling, what feels like it
was
upset.
At Conestoga Valley.
It was at home. Yeah. And it was only by a touchdown, 34-27, but Buckskins get a nice marquee win. And in 5A, for power ratings, they needed that one badly. And, are possibly, preventing Exeter from running the league table again before their big matchup against Manheim Central. A little bit of me wonders, did Exeter look past the Buckskins a bit because of the Barons coming to town this week? We'll never know, but it's a tough one for Exeter, who's still having a fantastic year. After the year they had last year, I think people thought they'd take a step back, maybe even a bigger step back, but they're trudging right along and sitting at 8-1 with a chance to share the LL Section 2 title if they can beat the Barons this week.
Yeah, and it's been year after year for Exeter. They seem to lose so much year after year, but just keep coming back. Everything it just keep reloading, and that's the sign, of a great program there. CB West, CB South. Wow. There were only 4 passes thrown in this game, so I mean, it had to be the fastest game maybe, of the season. But CB West, wow. I mean, they're on their way to a top ranking, in District 1.
Oh, for sure. They look great sitting there at 9-0 after a win over their rival. Just kind of back to, I feel like it's 20 years ago when CB West ruled the PIAA. How many they played for, like 5 straight state championships. They had won,
Yeah.
I think 3 of them, maybe even 4. That's just the late 90s, early 2000s. CB West was electric, and this is year kind of a return to their roots, sitting at 9-0 and beating one of their sister schools, and they get the other one this week, and I'd expect them to run the table here and get to 10-0.
Souderton remained undefeated, beat Upper Dublin pretty handily there. And Southern Columbia coming off of a loss. We've said that a couple times over the last couple of years, but they come in and this is a 2A team kind of taking a whooping on a 4A team from District 2. Southern Columbia, I mean, they just keep on rolling, right, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. I was a little surprised to see their loss to Mount Carmel the other week, but came back in strong fashion here against the Quad Wyoming area, who a few years back, the helmet project went out there. There was the helmet voting, and Wyoming area is one that jumped out to me as being really cool. They've got like that obelisk building with warriors and the stars. Thought it was really fantastic. But the Southern Columbia Tigers were just too much in this matchup, 34-7 on the road. And now Southern Columbia will finish the season at home against Shikellamy. And, only the one blemish at Mount Carmel, one of the oldest and most prestigious high school football programs in the state.
Yeah, it's going to set up for some pretty interesting postseason up that way. That's for sure. And obviously, you're a Penn State alum, and it had to be painful to watch Ohio State beat the Nittany Lions 20-12. I'm going to take us off share there, and you and I can talk because I was at the game, and obviously wrote my article and whatever like that. And what were your impressions of that loss?
Yeah, incredibly disappointing. The offense just was shockingly bad. I guess that's my biggest takeaway and frustration is that the offense couldn't do anything. We're kept hearing about how much over the years the offensive line has improved. They couldn't open up any lanes for Singleton and Allen. Drew Aller looked completely off, had an abysmal game for him. Not what anyone expected. There seems to be a lack of weapons on offense, especially when the running backs aren't going. And we've been hearing it all season that there is absolutely no spark, no big plays. The way that Singleton and Allen were running last year, it seems to be thwarted. The offensive line isn't opening the holes. There's just no possibility of a big gain, a big play. It hasn't come up yet. The wide receivers are just not either. It's a group of great guys, but no one stepping up like we needed. There's no KJ Hamler. There's no Jahan Dotson. They're relying on the tight ends, which is great. But when you're talking about making a defense, take the lid off of defense, Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren aren't going to do that. Great in certain scenarios, great players all around, but there's just something missing on offense. Coach Yursich seems to almost be afraid to try downfield passes. Is that because the weapons aren't there? I don't know. Defensively, the only frustrating part, and how can you be that frustrated when he's the best player in the nation? They couldn't keep Marvin Harrison under control, but how many people really can?
Yeah.
But in terms of it being, a marquee matchup against Kalen King or Johnny Dixon, I guess I expected a little bit more. I didn't think they'd be able to get him open as much as they did. And kudos to Ryan Day and his coaching staff, Brian Hartline, fantastic work by them, running mesh routes underneath, getting him open, getting him in space, and allowing Marvin Harrison Jr. to still have a big game despite, the offense only putting up 20 points. Marvin Harrison still had his day. And if anything, people probably feel even better about him if he's going against the Penn State defense and secondary that's supposed to be one of the best in the nation, and he still was able to do that. It just never felt like Penn State was in the game from the beginning. Multiple 3-and-outs, 1 for 16 on third downs. Just an overall poor performance offensively. Never felt that Penn State was in position to take control, and the defense eventually wore down. And, I really can't say much negative about Manny Diaz and his crew over there, because they tried to weather the storm, and in the end they got zero help on the other side of the ball, and that was it. It's disappointing. We all know the stats about James Franklin and his inability to defeat Ohio State, Penn State, or against teams in the top 10, but there's still a lot to play for. I'm excited for Penn State, Indiana this week. I'm still mad at them and you, Bruce, for 3 years ago. So I'm ready to take on the Hoosiers and move on. And hopefully Penn State can play better against Michigan in a few weeks, because that's their biggest game now. They can really throw a wrench into the plans of the Wolverines, the Big Ten, and the CFP. So that's what we're looking forward to. I feel like it's going to happen, not after the way they play against Ohio State, but there's a lot left to play for. And I hope the Nittany Lions are ready for Indiana this week.
Well, I think they'll be ready for Indiana this week. Indiana is really suffering. I mean, I think that the only coach that probably isn't going to leave is, I think, the head coach. They're really having a tough time. So I don't fully expect that. I don't expect that Penn State's going to have any problem. My take on the game, look, I'm looking at it as glass half full. Okay. When they, and I even put it in a tweet out there, that when that Ohio State succeeded despite their coaching, going for it on fourth down from the 2-yard line when you're only up 4 points, and Penn State stopping them, put Penn State right back in the game. The unfortunate thing was Penn State didn't take advantage of it. They had a number of opportunities that they weren't able to take advantage of. They had opportunities to create field position in special teams that they couldn't take advantage of. But I still revert back. It's a completely different ball game if the defensive holding call doesn't negate that defensive touchdown there in the second quarter, or in the first quarter. It's a completely different game, and you can't tell me that the quarterback was bolting out of the pocket. He didn't even have the ball up to throw, and that's when there was the fumble. And then they called defensive holding. Well, the guy's actually technically a runner. I thought it was a bad call, but there's not much you can do. The referees got together. They talked about it. They made the determination that it was coming back. Do I think that it was somewhat maybe home field related? Who knows? But I thought it was a bad call. But still, throughout all of that, Joe, I mean, it was 10-6 through the third quarter. Penn State was still in the game. They were given, Ohio State gave them every opportunity to succeed, and unfortunately they didn't take advantage of. I was a little bit taken back a little bit by some of the play calling. I mean, there were some plays where they had like 3rd and short. I mean, their bread and butter is running the football. They're throwing it. They're throwing it in 3rd and 1, and on first down, they're not bothering to try and take advantage of some isolated man coverage on the outside. So right. Yeah, I think that they're, as he talked about, I think that they're taking advantage of. I think a lot of these problems were masked by the fact that Penn State kept touting the fact that they'd scored over 30 points for like a game for like 12 straight games and led the country. It's like their offense was, doing very well, where I think that in all fairness, they probably knew they were going to have a tough time scoring points. And it's funny, the first words out of James Franklin's mouth when he came in to the post-game press conference was, "Those are the 2 best defensive teams in the country." so take it for what it's worth.
I mean, defensively, sure. I think Penn State, Ohio State are easily in the top 10, argue probably top 5. So I think it can be put out there like that. I'm sure there's some SEC schools that want to be lumped in that conversation. Maybe one or two out west as well. But the offense was just so. You mentioned play calling from Coach Yursich. It just seems sometimes that he had himself turned around. They have 2nd and 1 or 2, and he's throwing a pass, and then it's third and 7, and he's running the ball. It's just, I almost feel like he was kind of purposely being contrarian to catch Ohio State off balance or something, and they're too good for that. You can't do that. It just seemed super weird. And just a few of the plays just remind me so much of the Ohio State game. I think it was at Penn State in 2018 where they had 4th and 5 and called an RPO that Miles Sanders got blown up. And one of the 2 games back to back that Penn State blew double-digit leads in the 4th quarter to Ohio State, and it's just frustrating.
I know it's frustrating for you Penn State fans, but look, bottom line is that they really have an opportunity to regroup. As you pointed out, they've got Michigan on the horizon, and can really, put a wrench in the works. And who knows what's going to happen with Michigan and this scouting, thing and whatever like that. Michigan may have, retroactively just eliminated themselves from the college football playoff, or even maybe
we don't
a
have
Big
the
Ten
time for that
championship.
discussion, Bruce.
I know, exactly right. All right, well, listen, we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at some of these power rankings real quick and see what some of the teams are that are likely to, be moving on here, and who are some of the ones that are going to have maybe a difficult time, in getting into the postseason. So we're going to bring up my stuff here, and give me a second. We'll get going and we'll see what we can do. We're going to try this again. There we go. And all right, so power rankings, we're going to start with District 11 here and take a look at their power rankings. A little bit different than, or excuse me, this is District 2. And a little bit different than obviously what we're familiar with District 3 and District 1. I think the items to take a look at, really, quite honestly, are in 4A. For them, Dallas, Valley View, Wyoming area, they're kind of fighting it out for 2 spots there. Dallas just had a big win last week over Wilkes-Barre, which was very important for them. And on the 5A side, Del Val is back having a good season. Yeah, they were a 6A team, dropped back down, and Del Val and Abington Heights, good seasons. Joe, what do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had actually forgotten that Delaware Valley had dropped down to 5A because they were a team just a couple years ago that I was looking, forward to whoever came out of District 3, that they were probably going to play Del Val. And now they're down at 5A and rebounding a bit, up to 6-3 now, on top of the power ratings, tied in the win-loss column with Abington Heights, but hold that the number 1 spot because of their strength of schedule. The Delaware Valley's played quite the schedule so far this year, and they've earned the right to be where they are with the way they've played to date. They started off the year with 3 straight losses, and now they've won 6 in a row against good teams too. They played Selinsgrove, Harrisburg, and Downingtown East before getting into their conference schedule, Division I up there in Lackawanna, and it reeled off 6 straight and have looked really good in the process. They beat a good Valley View team a couple weeks ago. Was Valley View's only loss. The Cougars had been undefeated to that part, and now they just shut out Scranton this past week. And guess what? They play Abington Heights this week. So if they want to stay on the 1 line, they're going to have to beat the guys that are sitting there at 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that from District 2 and what have you, they don't necessarily have the number of teams, but boy, I tell you what, they really have some great football. And now we're looking at the District. I thought this was District two. No, I actually have the same one. Sorry about that. We're gonna stop that share. We're gonna see if we can get our where did that go here? Man, I just have so many windows open here, Joe. It's crazy. So, and we're just gonna
No, well, so Delaware Valley's looking for revenge in that rivalry game too, because they lost Abington Heights last year, 38-13. So huge game for them this week in District 2 for not only the Lackawanna Division 1 championship, but for power rankings, and always love a good revenge rivalry game.
yeah, the revenge rivalry games are, in my opinion, what it's all about. All right, now we're gonna try and do this. Here we go. And all right, District 3. There are a lot of stories here in District 3. Obviously, the issue with Steel High, I mean, they're kind of in, they're really kind of, waiting to get to the PIAA tournament. But the plot thickens really, in double A, a very good, everybody was kind of picking, Trinity to come out of District 3, but boy, Anvil Clean has had surely a good year.
Yeah, the Dutchmen have looked really good. Had struggles earlier with losses to Elko and Littlestown, and just had a 1-point setback to Schuylkill Valley, who looks really good in AAA. I expect them to beat Northern Lebanon this week and come in riding high, sitting at 7-3. I am very much impressed by Trinity. They a very, very good team. The Shamrocks with Coach Jordan Hill, Penn State alum. But they have a 1-point loss to Wyomissing, where they very easily could have beaten the Spartans in week 3, and then had to play West Perry, who they lost to by 3. And then just this past week had a ridiculous game at Steel High, 42-37 setback. So their 3 losses are to teams that I think have a combined 1 loss. Steel High is undefeated. I know West Perry is undefeated, and Wyomissing's only loss is to Cocalico. So Trinity's strength of schedule very, very high. I do think Trinity and Anvil Cleonic would be a great District 3 AA championship game. That would be a fantastic one.
Yeah, and in AAA, I tell you what, this is where the power rankings, I mean, look at how close it is between West Perry and Wyomissing on who's going to host the home playoff game. I mean, it is, what is that, like 10,000ths of a point?
Yeah, 0.000132. Yeah, not a lot separating them. It'll be interesting to see what happens here, because both teams have a tough matchup this week, and either of them could lose, both could win. And then it's going to come down to the opponent winning percentage, the strength of schedule. If both teams lose or win, I could still see Wyomissing jumping West Perry because maybe their opponents do better. I do not have a file to calculate the AAA rankings or anything. I'm sure Coach Steve O'Neill with the Spartans would love for me to crunch the numbers and let him know what's going to happen. If West Perry wins and they win, if they both lose, if one wins, one loses. But it is really ridiculously close. And obviously it matters because you get to host a district championship game.
Sure.
And Bruce, you and I called the West Perry at Wyomissing district championship game last year. And
Yeah.
I know Wyomissing, it was a big number on the scoreboard, but I was still really impressed with West Perry and not at all surprised with what they're doing in AAA in District 3 right now. And I would love to see that rematch this year.
Yeah, right. So is it going to be out at West Perry, or is it going to be like on a Saturday afternoon at Bob Wolfram Field?
Travel arrangements, Bruce, I kind of hope it's at Wyomissing, but
yeah,
that
would be a lot of fun again.
Great game.
A lot of fun if we could get back out there and do that game again. And 4A, obviously the 800-pound football player in the room there is Bishop McDevitt. But it's incredible the depth of the 4A division in District 3. I just find it incredible.
Yeah, I mean, look at those top 5. Those top 5 teams are fantastic. Bishop McDevitt, undefeated. I guess they have a game or maybe a couple games that don't count.
I'm actually,
NCAA.
I'm actually doing their game Friday night against Lower
Oh, that's
Dolphin.
Lower
so-
Dolphin. Yeah. So they beat Mount St. Joseph's from Maryland and DePaul Catholic from New Jersey to open the season. Those games don't count in the PIAA, the District 3 power rating. So they're really 9-0 and have beat some powerhouses, including LaSalle College High School in week 3. And they're just running roughshod through the Keystone Division in the Med-Penn Conference. They ran away with that title, and they should have no problem beating Lower Dolphin this week. I'm interested to see who their matchup ends up being in the championship game, because it's tough for me to think that someone's going to beat them before then. But wow, Twin Valley, Manheim Central, East Pennsboro, who we already talked about, Lampeter Strasburg, all really, really strong teams. I could see any of them competing against Bishop McDevitt in that title game.
Yeah, correct. And yeah, interesting. And getting into to 5A, up is down with the exception of Cocalico. The teams that not the usual suspect, I guess, would be the headline for 5A in District 3 this year, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know much about New Oxford. They're sitting there at 8-0 in the PIAA for all intents and purposes. They did lose last week to a school from Maryland, but undefeated in the power ratings. They got Eastern York this week, and I don't know much about them, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
Cedar Cliff, Cocalico, Garden Spot, Ephrata, Conestoga Valley, Exeter. I don't want to dismiss Southwestern because they just pulled up an upset against York William Penn.
Yeah.
This past week. It was the first time they've beaten them in like a handful of years, maybe longer, 6 or 7. Fantastic job by Southwestern, which really helped them in terms of these power ratings that we're looking at. But Conestoga Valley just beat Exeter. I know there's kind of a round robin with Garden Spot, Ephrata, and Twin Valley there in the LL, but Garden Spot and Ephrata right there neck and neck in these rankings. And Cocalico, I feel like they're the defending champs, and with how much talent that is there in 5A, they're almost being overlooked sitting there in the 3 spot. But I could definitely see them repeating as champs. They've looked really good since a really weird opening week loss to Warwick.
Yeah, nobody can figure that one out. I can tell you that unequivocally. Most of the time in the Penn State press box, we're talking about Friday night high school results. We still can't figure that one out. But anyway, obviously you're the resident expert on 6A here in District 3.
Yeah.
But tell you what, quite honestly, it looks like the playoff spots are pretty well locked up for a change.
And they are. The seedings are going to bounce around a little bit, because you can see after Cedar Crest there at 8 at 7-2, no one else has more than 4 wins. So I don't even know that there's a possibility for Dallastown or Chambersburg to leap over anyone. Cedar Crest plays Lebanon this week, and Lebanon's really struggling. Actually, they play them Thursday night. I don't see Cedar Crest losing that game. That gets them to 8-2. York William Penn has their rivalry game with Central York. I got to favor Central York in that matchup, but Bruce, in rivalry games, you never know what's going to happen. And York William Penn just got stung by Southwestern, so maybe they'll be out for some blood and can take it against their rival. We'll see about that. Cumberland Valley's got to travel to Altoona. Cumberland Valley, an interesting team, struggled early, but just this last week upset State College.
Yeah,
so that was a shocker to me. Get them to 5-4 and quite possibly save their season and help them get into the playoffs. I'm not sure they would have made it at 5-5, and that's if they can beat Altoona and get to 6-4. So huge win by Cumberland Valley. Central Dolphin lost to Cumberland Valley a couple of weeks ago. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. They get to host Harrisburg on Friday night, so that's an interesting one as well. And obviously, my Wilson Bulldogs are hosting number 1. So you talk about Bishop McDevitt being an 800-pound monster. I got to say the Blue Streaks are that as well this year in District 3 6A, just absolutely running roughshod over everyone. And it'll be a tall and tough task for my Bulldogs Friday night at home for senior night to take down the Blue Streaks and cement themselves in the power ratings in the top half. If Wilson loses, I honestly think they're going to drop to 6 or 7. So a win would be great to possibly guarantee a home game at sitting at probably the 4 seed. We'll see what happens.
And let's do a quick look at District 1, which, my oh my, just loaded with 6A and 5A teams. Looking at CB West Souderton, a one-loss Springford team, Downingtown East and Downingtown West. Boy, that's a big rivalry game this week. I
Yeah.
mean, just loaded. And the thing is that they're going to take 16 teams. So really the game, I think, between Pennsbury and the Neshaminy will actually, this is almost a play-in
Yeah,
game.
it really is.
And that, but I'll tell you what, this is, one of the things that I talked about, the fact that, you know, a wild card team with all of the 6A and 5A teams that are in District 1, doesn't it make sense that rather than a bye week in the PIAA tournament, that you might like take a wild card team from some of these districts that have so many in that classification? I don't know. There's got to be a way to figure that out.
I don't. You're not going to get any. You're not going to get a team that loses to be put in the PIAA playoff. I don't see that happening. You're talking about having the District 1 runner-up make it to the PIAA playoffs or something like that.
Well, maybe not. Maybe it's like, obviously there's an upset, like a prohibitive favorite might lose or something like that. But that's where, we're gonna kind of unveil a state power ranking system, that maybe it's the best highest power rank team that doesn't win a district champion, that, or the next, couple that would get in if there's a couple of buys or whatever like that. I don't know, just something to think about.
They don't pay me the big bucks to come up with the logistics for something like that. But I know football is one of the unique sports for that, because you don't have to win your district to make state playoffs, but football has always been like that. It's always been a winner go home mentality in the playoffs. There is no rewards for finishing second. If you want a shot at a state title, you need to win your district first. That's the way it is. And I'm not sure there's a better way to do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just think somehow that it's a little bit unfair that you're only taking one team out of 32 versus like in the WPIAL where you're taking one team out of 5. I mean,
well, I mean, we've always known that the eastern half of the state is more populated, or at least in terms of school districts.
Sure.
We see that across other sports that, some sports don't have very few schools that compete out west, thinking about like to water polo and things like that. There's not a lot out west. Just the odd distribution of school districts and teams that support a variety of sports is uneven. And they've tried to fix that by putting District 3 out west.
Yeah, sure.
One of the second or third biggest district in the state in terms of teams that compete at each level, and that they've tried to make up for that. I know it is a little wonky with the way things work with the WPIAL and those districts out there, but yeah, that was kind of their response, was either to have District 3 out in the west, or then for a brief 2 or 4 year period they put what was it, District 11 out there, I think.
Yeah.
For 2 years. So yeah, that's the only way they can do it, is have a non-western district thrown out with them. Otherwise it would be really top heavy, or really east heavy, I should say.
Yeah. Well, 5A here in District 1, I tell you what, I don't know if it's a surprise, but Chester being number 1, just an incredible accomplishment. Strathaven, they, at 8-1, Springfield, Plymouth White Marsh. I saw Westchester Ruston earlier this year. That's a good ball club there. My gosh, just an enormous depth of talent in 5A in District 1. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's much like we just were looking at in 6A. These teams they're playing good football this year, and it's interesting to see that Phoenixville's all the way down at 8 at 7-2.
Yeah.
Does 5A take 16 as well?
I believe they each take 16. Yeah. So it's a full, 4-round tournament for both 5A and 6A down in District 1. So they really strap them up. I mean, that's rock'em sock'em football that they're playing to get ready for the PIAA tournament. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think 5A is a little bit more top heavy than 6A. I definitely think the top 8 in 5A is better than the bottom 8, but we've seen some crazy things come out of District 1 before. I mean, just a few years ago, I believe the 16 seed upset the 1 seed. So
Yes.
yeah, we've seen weird things happen when you invite all the number of teams that they invite. You can get some crazy upsets, but that's what makes it fun, at least as an outsider. If you've got skin in the game, it's probably not as fun.
No, you're exactly right. So all right. Well, I tell you what, we're winding it down here. So we're gonna do a quick look at next week's schedule here. And I'm waiting for my screen share to load here. Looks like I got rid of my screen share, unfortunately. So we'll see what we can come up with.
Are you going in the
There we
order
go.
that you sent to me?
I am going in order. So
Well,
we're going to take a look at the look ahead here, and just give me a second. I believe that I'll be able to get that. No, I don't believe.
we're gonna
Just
start
had
with
a
Downingtown East and Downingtown West.
yes, we
That's the
are.
first
Yep.
one on the schedule, and it's a doozy. Obviously, a huge rivalry game, which we get a lot of those in week 10. And East versus West in Downingtown. Cougars, Whippets. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle for sure. East has posted 5, believe it or not, 5 straight shutouts, 6 overall in the season. I thought it was ridiculous what Manheim Township had done, not allowing a point in October. Well, the Cougars haven't allowed a point since September 8th. That September 8th, it's almost November, Bruce, and Downingtown East has not allowed a point since a 37-6 win over Delaware Valley, who we already talked about tonight. West is pretty impressive as well. They only have 1 loss. They're sitting at 8-1, losing to Chester 2 weeks ago, 28-19. They get to host this year, so we'll see what Coach Milano can do with his Whippets against Coach Mata and his Cougars. Downingtown East hasn't really been tested all that much. The closest game was week 2 at State College. They came away with a 2-point win. Other than that, it's been blowout city.
Yeah. Yeah. It is going to be, I favor East only because,
I do
West,
too.
kind of took it on the chin there at Chester. But I tell you what, that's not uncommon. I mean, Coach Wolfram talks about it all the time. The best home field advantage is when you're playing on Saturday morning. And I mean, 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning, that's tough to play. And that's where Downingtown had to go down and play in. So that was
Chester,
that,
yep.
Chester lost. But I tell you what, and the Chamonix and Pennsbury, that's going to be a very interesting game. That's really a playing game,
basically
right?
a playoff game, right?
Yeah. Playing game. That's anybody's toss there, but I like Chester over Academy Park. Chester is really just exceeding expectations this year, but that program really on the way up. Steel High and West Perry,
huge game.
With 2 top flight teams. I think much more on the line. I think if West Perry wins this, clearly because of Steel High and their maybe strength of schedule, but that's a 3A versus 1A. Better how that kind of plays out in the power rankings.
Yeah, it's West Perry beating Steel High, despite us knowing how good Steel High is and how good a win that would be. It's not going to be reflected as much in the power ratings because they're a single A team. So it's I don't want to say it's going to hurt West Perry, because obviously you need to win the game. That's the most important factor. But they're not going to get as big of a power rating bump as if Steel High was a 3 or a 4A. So that's going to be a little rough, and is one of the reasons that we could see why I'm missing jump over West Perry, even if West Perry wins. But yeah, Steel High is having a fantastic season. Coach Irby, his rollers are averaging just under 48 points a game. But West Perry, not a slouch either. The Mustangs are averaging just over 42 points per game. So what a fantastic matchup here in week 10, Steel High and West Perry.
And Little Sound and Boiling Springs. I tell you what, this is a play-in game, I think, as well. What do you think?
I agree. it was tough for me to figure out who I was leaning towards this week because Littlestown's having a great year. They won their last 5 last year. They're 7-2 this year, so they're playing really good football. They beat Bermudian Springs last season as well. But Coach Lippy's Thunderbolts are going to have a tough task with Bermudian Spring because they've won 6 in a row after starting the season 0-3. So I think I favor the Eagles in this one only because it's at home, but I do expect it to be a very good game at Bermudian Springs.
And now Manheim Central at Exeter. Manheim Central wins. They're the outright Section 2 LL champ. What do you think?
Yeah, and I unfortunately for my Berks County brethren, I think Manheim Central is going to get it done. They've had 4 shutouts this year, and including 3 of the last 5. Coach Hans Barons are rolling right now. We talked about their loss to Cocalico, but I think Manheim Central is going to be focused, and I'm sure they're really angry about the way the game against Exeter finished last year in Manheim, where I believe they thought they had the game wrapped up, and Exeter was able to come away with the victory. And Exeter's coming off that loss to Conestoga Valley. Coach Bauer's done a fantastic job for them. It should be an entertaining game for sure, but unfortunately, I do think Manheim Central is going to take it from Exeter this week.
Yeah, I do too. The one thing that I found out by talking to Coach Hahn this summer, 7-on-7s or whatever like that, that loss to Exeter, I mean, that still hurts for them. And they really wanted the section championship. And this year they're playing for it. Now they're at Exeter, but I think that Manheim Central extremely motivated, and I think that they will win. Troy and Canton, these are 2 small powerhouses from up north. And I tell you what, knockdown, drag out. I believe that Troy is 2A and Canton is 1A, so they won't meet in the postseason. So this game really is for bragging rights.
Yeah, and Troy's 9-0, Canton's 8-1. I for some reason I was leaning Troy in this. It made it tough though because it's at Canton, but Canton's coming off a loss at Milton last week, and Troy's surrendered over 7 points just twice this year. So their defense, really a swarming defense for Coach Smith and the Trojans. But like you said, it's a great game. It doesn't matter it matters for getting into the playoffs, but they can't meet again. So this is for bragging rights here at the end of the season, and Troy Canton should be a good one.
Valley View and Scranton Prep, 2 8-1 teams. You have Valley View, a 4A team, Scranton Prep, a 3A team. So, once again, it's for bragging rights.
Yeah, and both coming in with identical 8-1 records, both only losing to Delaware Valley. So we'll see what comes about this matchup. It's at Dunmore, so it's kind of a neutral field for Valley View and Scranton.
Yeah, and actually the game not appearing on our screen there, but one that I want to talk about, Southern Lehigh and Northwest Lehigh, both teams 9-0.
Yeah.
And but Southern Lehigh, this is a 5A team. And they only beat one team bigger than them, or a 5A or better, which was a 6A team their first game. The rest of that, they've kind of beaten up on, lower classification teams. Northwest Lehigh is a 3A team. Now you can only play who obviously who you have on the schedule there, but I'm not sure that this necessarily favors Southern Lehigh, considering the lower classifications of their opponents, but it's still for bragging rights up there in District 11.
Yeah, and you know what? They're both 9-0, playing good football, but Northwestern Lehigh beat Southern Lehigh last year in big fashion. Now Northwestern Lehigh gets to host this year, so I think Coach Snyder and the Tigers are going to take this one as well.
Yeah, I really do too. I think that it's going to be it comes down to the end of the season like that, and it really becomes a grudge match city. So, but what I want to do real quick as we wind this down, obviously Penn State plays Indiana. We really think that that's going to be not very competitive or what have you. But let's go ahead and bring in the actual Penn Live ratings, and then I want to bring in our WPIAL Blitz statewide rankings as well. So let's just do a quick share on the this is the Penn Live rankings. And you can see, if I could see here, got to reconfigure a lot of my stuff here. We've got the 1A rankings. Now, this is obviously human rankings. So you've got, Steel High, Lackawanna Trail. This is all based on obviously record and, the human element. Same thing with District 2 or with 2A, Farrell, Westinghouse, Richland. Southern Columbia being number 5, Mount Carmel, Troy, Steel Valley. Anything standing out to you thus far? I mean, that, maybe should be some other teams in or that, Joe? It's kind of tough on the smaller classifications.
It is tough. I feel like the ones are properly ranked there. I don't see any that I have any qualms with. I like the was that 3A there.
3A, yeah.
Missing Avonworth, Newman, Goretti, West Perry, Danville, Northwestern Lehigh. We just talked about.
I'm gonna bring in my buddy Ian here real quick.
That's a strong top 7 for sure. I don't really have any qualms with that.
And as we kind of move up there, bring in our buddy Ian McMeans, and because we're taking a look at the Penn Live rankings right now, and there's our buddy Ian. Wow, the real Ian McMeans.
Yes. How's everybody doing tonight?
Is this the first time you two guys have met?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. We've followed each other on Twitter for a while, so nice to meet you, Joe.
Oh, yeah. Likewise.
Yeah, Joe is the resident 6A power rankings prognosticator. So both of you guys here, what we're doing, Ian, is we're going down the Penn Live rankings before we take a look at your rankings, the the computer rankings, so to speak. 4A, it's pretty difficult to argue. This is obviously all the human element involved there. Can you see that okay, Ian?
Yep, I'm good.
And obviously McDevitt being number 1. I think it's going to be very interesting when we switch over to the the power rankings aspect of the scheduling here. 5A, obviously Imhotep, Peters Township, Roman Catholic, Southern Lehigh, Cocalico. Not a lot of debate, there. And then 6A with St. Joe Prep being number 1, Parkland, Central Bucks West, Manheim Township. So let's take a look now. I'm going to stop the share for a minute, and we will bring in the let's see which ranking we've got here. Okay, this looks to be the 6-5 and 4A. Can you guys see that all right?
Yep. Yeah. So I have my spreadsheet also, but if you want me to explain kind of what I did here, was I took 2 factors in play. I took the quality of the teams you beat, so the number of victories you have, with a factor of, if you beat a 6A team, you got more points, 5A team slightly less, 4A team slightly less, so on and so forth. Plus, so that was sort of the quality of victory metric, and then plus a gave points for however many wins your opponents had. So if you beat a 6A team with 7 wins, that got you a lot more points than beating a 6A team that just had 1 win. Kind of like how District 1 operates their formula. How I did it differently, though, is I also added in a margin of victory metric. So up to +10 or -10 based on winning or losing was also added into the equation, and then divided by the number of games played. I also accounted for out-of-state teams as well. So it took into account the full slew of games that all teams played. And what I tried to do with this was to create a metric that could rank every team 6A through 1A top to bottom, kind of based on the quality of their schedule, the quality of their wins. The other thing I did was try to assign points to the losing team, which I think, from my knowledge of how statewide rankings work, District 1's the only team that does that, but District 1 does it based on just the number of wins your opponent has. They didn't factor in what classification your opponent has. So I added that factor in as well. And I can share my spreadsheet here if you want to see kind of some of how the overall rankings stacked up once you started to mesh like the 6A and the 5A teams together.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. See if it'll let me.
It should. I would
There we
hope.
go. All right, so you can see that?
Not quite yet.
Oh, it tells me it's loading.
Pretty close.
There we go.
All right.
So
And-
this is overall with all of them. But you can see, so there are a couple 5A teams sprinkled in
I
here.
can't see it yet. Can you?
Oh, you
like,
can't
maybe-
see it yet?
Change, Bruce. You got to click on the view options and change.
Oh wait, I gotta stop sharing. There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right. Now, Ian, go ahead. There we go.
Now you can see. Okay, so this one has all the classifications listed together. So you can see there are a couple 5A teams, a couple 4A teams started to be sprinkled in here along with the top 6A teams. And a lot of that's because those teams have beaten some really good teams along the way. Peters Township has multiple victories over 6A opponents out here in the Whippeal. And the one thing that I did with the formula too was giving those points for, beating really, or losing to really good teams. Like St. Joe's Prep got almost the same number of points for losing by 3 to IMG as they did for beating 1-win Archbishop Wood. So, it kind of equated some of those things together. But overall, I can sort by classification if you want to go through, and
Let's do it.
just look at, so, the top, oops, that didn't work out as well as I wanted it to. Okay, but the top couple here in 6A, Pittsburgh Central Catholic, Central Bucks West, Manheim Township, St. Joe's Prep, Springford, Parkland.
Look at your
North
number
Allegheny.
33 there, Joe.
Yeah, I see that. It's a little farther down the list than I want them to be at, but they got to win the game Friday and they can jump up a lot because Manheim Township's sitting up there a beast with PCC and Central Bucks West.
Yeah. So obviously, the human element of trying to rank teams, does not take into account the I factor. But I think overall, generally speaking, as we have kind of the top 10 or so, or probably the top 10-ish teams that exist, in the state, they might be slightly out of order. But I think, I ran this by Bruce last night on our Whippeal Blitz show, and he was pretty positive about the names that were at the top. The formula probably got it about right.
Yeah, interesting to me just that they don't like the formula doesn't like St. Joe's Prep as much as most people do.
Well, that's because of their strength of schedule. They played like St. Peter's from New Jersey. It was like 1 win. And there was another team too that they played that had a really poor strength of schedule. And, couple that with, CB West, who's, obviously playing very well. Even Pittsburgh Central Catholic, Manheim Township. I think it just kind of look. It's something else to talk at. I think the nice part about this is I think it can actually quantify a top 20 or top 25 ranking pretty easily, right, Ian?
Yeah, I think so. And then as you start to move down, so keep an eye on these numbers here on the far right hand side. That the top ones are in the 150s, then 140s, and so as we move over to 5A, you'll see the numbers kind of start to decrease a little bit more. That the top 5A teams now are in the 140s, 130s, 120s type range. Once again, doesn't love Imhotep Charter quite as much.
Doesn't like
actually,
Cocalico very much. Holy cow.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably a factor of the teams that they've
But
played.
the Warwick, their only losses to Warwick.
Yeah. But it doesn't love Warwick either. So, you know, but that's the thing I tried to do though, like I said, overall is to try and, you know, when we include everyone together to come up with an approximate ranking of where teams more or less sit overall statewide, to try and account for classification. So as you know, I start to scroll down here. Let me find like hold on, where's the one I was where's our top ranked 2A teams? Okay, so let's see here. Farrell, there we go. So Southern Columbia, the top ranked 2A team, but their rating of 100 means kind of that their average win was over, you know, a 6A caliber opponent, because you get 100 points for beating a 6A team. So,
Wow.
you know, that Southern Columbia being ranked here, you know, along with the likes of Cocalico and North Penn, you know, very solid 5-6A teams, but that tells you how well Southern Columbia has done against the strength of schedule they've played as well. So I think it provides an interesting point of comparison based on actual on-field results.
Well, I tell you what, Joe's got to run here, but this is going to be a regular occurrence, Ian, and I think that we'll put together like a top 20 or something like that here.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Ian. That's really cool.
Yeah,
and
I'm looking for a way to figure out how to put it all on my website without like having all the sloppiness of the background formulas also available. So because there was some sloppiness on some other sheets in the spreadsheet, but thanks for giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about it tonight. You know, I kind of surprised Bruce with it last night. I said, hey, this is something I just did in the last week. So I think it has some potential as we play it out long term. The one thing that it does need a couple points of input, so it wouldn't be good for like a preseason ranking, but for, you know, once you get 3 or 4 weeks into the season, probably would work pretty well to start to draw those comparisons between teams across districts.
well, Ian, thanks for joining us. Joe, listen, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you stopping by. Fresh set of downs, and hey, we'll have to get you on here more often. I mean, did you have fun?
Oh yeah, I appreciate the invite for sure, 100%. I'm glad that Ian could come in here at the end, because that is fantastic. It reminds me of a new age version of like the Born Power Index and things like that are out there. That's great. Yeah, Bruce, thanks for the invite. We're throwing it back to 2018 here with the fresh set of downs, the way we used to do it 5 years ago. So
Yeah,
a lot of fun. Glad to be on here talking at the end of the season, and looking forward to the playoffs across the state districts and MPIAA. We'll see how things play out. It's going to be a lot of fun in November and December.
all right. Hey, listen, thanks, fans, for tuning in, and don't forget everything on demand, the WPL Blitz Show, fresh set of downs. Appreciate all of your support. Don't forget us on Penn Live this Friday with Laura Dauphin and Bishop McDevitt. Take care. We'll see you around, gang. So long.